Welcome to Those Who Do Podcast, a podcast about people, their passions, their vocations, their interests, and their lives. I'm Zach Barclay, here with the Ernest Hemingway to my R. Crumb, Tony Forsmark. Suzanne Francis is originally from Long Island. She's a writer of books known for Disney Princess Beginnings, Onward, the Junior Novelization, Moana's Big Leap, Frozen 2 Family Game Night, and many others. She's also known for television. She wrote for Unhappily Ever After with Bobcat Goldthwait, with a little bunny, Mr. Floppy, and an original screenplay, Wieners. Wieners. She joins us to talk about her life before Los Angeles and how she ended up across the country working toward her goals, her influences, parenting teens, and the different creative processes involved in writing for different mediums. Her roots are in comedy, and it shines through in this conversation, full of chuckles, insight into the creative process, and the reality of trying to make it in the entertainment business. This is Those Who Do, writing from Frozen to Wieners with Suzanne Francis.
Incognito. What are you doing?
What did you do? Bring our little girl home.
I still like meeting Long Islanders, I gotta say. I wanted to get out, but when I meet them out here, we're like, we have that thing, you know?
I would say it's probably the same for Midwestern people. Like, you bump into a Midwesterner, you can tell right away. Like, you're like, how many tornadoes have you seen?
And that connection is more meaningful when you're not there, right? You're there and you're like, whatever.
Yeah, I'm like, I hope I never see another one of you people again.
I'm done with you guys. How you doing?
Can't get out of there fast enough.
Yep.
Sometimes it includes my kids. I want to be away.
No idea what you mean.
Yeah. It's,
I needed a reset after. Are we heard by children?
No, God, no. Or those, you mean real children or like children on the internet?
No, like the real children. The 13-year-old girl. Her hormones are very difficult.
Oh yeah.
Just like I gotta go reset. I have to go talk.
And it's like you hear horror stories and you're like, yeah.
Oh, we live horror stories. Wait till you get there.
Why? How old are your kids?
Which ones? 26, 23, 10, and 7.
The two girls are 10 and 7.
Yeah.
All right, so you have a wide range.
Yeah,
but the girls are 10 and 7, so he hasn't gone.
Yeah. Okay. I know exactly what it's going to be like because I know my youngest, and she's 7, and I'm terrified of her. She's a horrible little person. She's bad. She's mean. She bosses us all around. I'm not going to have to worry about her like taking any guff from anybody her entire life, though.
Maybe she's getting it out now.
Yeah.
Or it could get doubly worse.
It's going to get worse.
And then you're like, oh.
It's 100% going to get worse. It cannot. Yeah.
Boarding school is a very...
One of the things I Googled brought that up because, of course, I'm always Googling, like, daughter. One of the things I called up I was like, they still do that? People still do that? You want your kid fixed? Like, send them here.
Take them here.
Yeah. I think Paris Hilton wrote a book about that.
Oh, my God. Imagine if she looks through my history.
Private tab.
Yeah,
Private tab.
Incognito is your friend. Truly is.
Just ask Jack.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you know how to do that? What are you doing? What are you Googling incognito? What are you doing?
Why you need that? Why do you need that?
Your Christmas presents.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, welcome to another episode of Those Who Do. We're joined today by writer Suzanne Francis. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you. Hello.
So I don't know how much Tony has told you about the format of this conversation, because I know that a lot of people get a little nervous when they come on a podcast because they think it's going to be an interview, and it is 100% not going to be an interview. I think just the few minutes that we've been talking prior to Tony doing the formal opener is more similar to what it's going to be than anything else. Okay. It's a conversation, and the title of the show is Those Who Do, and that implies that the main focus is going to be about what you do for a living, or whatever, if somebody has a hobby or something, but that's not really honest. Like the main focus is you as a person and how your childhood, your past, your current life inform what it is that you do, because you wouldn't be hired and brought on to do the writing jobs that you have if you weren't you. So people lose sight of how important individuality and personal experience are in hobbies, jobs, things like that. So really what we're wanting to do is kind of get to know you. So we're going to start, I always joke, and I forgot whatever anybody's name is. I was like, okay, well, where we're going to start is we're going to start with little Susie.
Little Susie.
When little Susie was 5 years old.
Little
you know what
Sue.
I mean? Little Sue.
Sue.
Little Sue.
Little Sue would have punched you if you called her Little
Sounds
Susie.
like little Sue might have some shared experiences with the struggles grown-up Sue is having right now.
Oh, yes. Just a little payback. You know what they say.
Oh, it comes back 10 times worse. Yep. So, I mean, that's basically where we want to start. Where are you originally from?
I'm from Long Island.
Okay.
Syosset.
Where's that?
Nassau County.
Okay. And home life as a child, nuclear family, divorced parents, what did you have going on?
It was pretty normal as, normal is.
Yeah.
I was the oldest, so I had a little time with just two parents, and then my sister came along, and then my brother.
How much time between all the kids?
My sister's 3 years younger. My brother's 7 years younger.
Okay, so pretty standard,
Yeah.
Reasonable, responsible parenting choices so far. We got that. Did your folks stay together your whole childhood?
Yeah, they did.
Are they still together now?
My dad passed away, it's been just 7 years.
And what did they do for a living? Were they creatives?
No, they were not at all. I mean, my mother specifically loved going to the theater and, was very into that stuff, but neither of them did anything. My mom did she loved gardening. So she had creative
output
and hobbies and stuff, but for work, she was a nurse. And my dad sold cars.
Oh, okay.
And then later I'm trying to think, how old was I when
So Dad had a little performance.
Yeah, he was definitely he was a very good storyteller, very, very charming and fun to be around. And he had that, he had that people person.
Right.
And my mom too. But then my mom ended up starting a business, jewelry business, I think, so she could be home more with kids and stuff. And my dad ended up hitching on to that. He was a little bit infamous for she has an idea and then all of a sudden it's hit, big fat Greek wedding. We're going to do this. After it's already, she established it. She's been doing it.
Look what we did.
So he stopped with the cars and he did that. So they were around a lot. So
that it became a kind of a from home family business?
Yeah, I mean, they would go they had a store for a little while, but they did better with traveling basically. So they would go do an office they want to have a, what do you call it? When they have all different vendors that come and they sell stuff to the employees.
Oh, sure.
So they would have they would be one of the vendors at the place at the sale.
Almost like a career fair, but for vendors.
Yeah.
So was the jewelry, was it stuff that they made or they bought and then resold?
They bought and resold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were both very business minded.
Sure.
I wish I had a little more of that in my blood because I feel like that's lacking. But they were both, they were business people. They were they were good at it.
Right.
So they're basically, for all intents and purposes, working from home. You and your siblings are fairly close in age, reasonably. You lived on Long Island your whole life up to 18?
Yeah, I went to college in Ohio.
Okay. Where'd you go?
Ohio University in Athens.
Oh, okay.
What prompted the move to that choice?
So I knew I wanted to do music, theater, or film. And I wanted a school that had those three things. And
Bobcats, right?
Yeah. And I wanted to get out of New York.
Wow. Okay.
I really wanted to get out of New York.
Why?
Just, I felt like high school was a little bit of a challenge. Middle school was very challenging for me.
Yeah.
High school was a little bit of a challenge. And I really felt like I want to see what else is going on in the
Absolutely.
Middle school, was it challenging socially or academically? Yeah. So the junk that all
very
middle
tough
school
for me.
people.
Were you
sucks.
a bookish writing
Yeah,
theater person?
I was always journaling since I was very little. making movies in my basement, like not a lot of nights out
Right.
in high school and stuff. So it was like I knew that everyone from my high school was going to like SUNY schools, the State University of New York. And I was like, I don't want to go to SUNY school. I don't want to go to 13th grade. I want to go see something different.
Right. So. And I guess that would be kind of the way, because I know that's true. A lot of people go to SUNY if they're in that area.
You know, it's kind of neat that we've kind of been noticing some commonalities between all the creatives we've talked to. And there's junior high school being tough, you know, and how important the arts, what an important part the arts have played in people finding their people. You know, and finding that spot where they fit. And then the other thing that keeps coming up is imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
It's unfortunate that a negative thing for me, being able to talk to people that have similar interests as I do, I'm looking and being like, oh, we are all that similar, you know, these are our people. And it's kind of refreshing to know that everyone has similar challenges. And it wasn't just like because I grew up in the Midwest or because I didn't really know who my people were in junior high. I mean, I had no idea who I was in junior high school. I didn't figure out who I was until 3 years into college. You know, I didn't do any creative stuff until I was 20. You know, I'd never written anything, never been in a play, never done any stand-up. Like I was completely lost until
the world opened when you were.
Yep. I mean, I did it. I wasn't an athlete, but I ran a lot away from people trying to beat me up. You know, like I was a bully's wet dream. Like it was bad, but it's kind of refreshing to see, like, look, I wasn't alone. I just didn't know it at the time. Right. You know, so we see all of the similar people.
Did you settle on writing when at Ohio, or was it you just did the smorgasbord and then went out in the world and decided which one?
So in college, I took an advertising class, like a copywriting class, where we were doing commercials. Like we were writing short little commercials for radio and for television. And I loved it. Like I just was like, this is so cool. Like it's all shrunken down. Like it has to be short. It has to hit it right. And I liked even like coming up with the slogans and stuff.
Right.
Like that was the first time where it was something directed toward, okay, this is definitely, but I didn't love selling stuff. Like, so that was the part. I liked the fun part. Like I liked trying to think of these fun ideas for whatever you were trying to do.
Right.
And I mean, when I look back to like when I was a kid, I was always doing that. Like I was making up stories. You know, I had my video camera, and anyone who came over like want to make a movie. Okay, these are the costumes I have. Let's do this. What do you think of this? Let's do like making up stuff, just fun. So just being creative. And so that led to TV and film writing. I took a playwriting class in college. I loved. So it was like, but that was really the springboard that started directing it specifically.
Yeah.
You know,
advertising or copywriting would lead to creative writing, which it is creative writing.
Right, because I never took another advertising or copywriting class, but I knew from that, I was like, I want to do that. You know, I want to try and do these, write scripts and like.
And did you do any of that when you were still in school? Did you write your own scripts or at least shorts, things like that?
Ever hear of obsessive aggression? It's so awesome. I have it. Like I have the script, and it's like, remember those letters you could like rub on? I like did that on the cover because it wasn't like
this is going to be big.
It's funny because it's a doozy. But the teacher said to me, and this is one of those things, like teachers have such an influence, right? When you're in a class, the teacher said, you certainly have an aptitude for writing dialogue. He said, look, so that really clicked for me too. I was like,
which is not easy. I know that.
Good at this, like, you know. And then playwriting, I took that playwriting class, and that was different. That was a lot more like creative, like touchy-feely. Like he had us doing stretches and then close your eyes and imagine who's on the stage. And so it was very, very open. And I loved it. It was fun. It was like, you know, you could just do whatever. And I mean, the stakes were so low, right? You're young.
But even at that time, though, I know, because you're like, this is I'm going to make something important here in college. You know, I mean, even though it's fun, you're like, they have never seen this before, right?
I don't know. I definitely tried to think in like comedy. Like I wanted my stuff to be funny, But I don't know if I had such high expectations. I think I just enjoyed the process of like imagining like these people are on stage and they're talking to you and what are they saying and who are they and who are the characters and just write it. He had us just write in class and then we would read if we wanted to. And at the end of that class, I ended up taking it a bunch of times because he worked with the actors and it was so much fun hearing actors read the stuff.
Right,
like
yeah.
that was the first time for me where I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Hearing your words come out of the other
and
people.
like what they did with it and like, oh, it sounds like real people now. It's not just in my head, you know? It was cool.
Well, and that's why table reads are so invaluable for writers in our industry. It's just, it's like, oh, I thought it sounded like this, or and either, yes, it does, and it works, or, oh, that doesn't sound
right. It doesn't work. Or, I mean, of course, the best thing is he made it even funnier.
Yeah.
That's even funnier than it was in my head.
Yep. Well, and comedy's great, too, because you get that immediate feedback. You know, like with drama, you don't know for sure until somebody tells you, like, wow, that really moved me or whatever. But with, even at a table read, somebody's going to laugh. If it's funny, you know, nobody's going to be holding back and like, we're not allowed to laugh here. You know, so comedy is like that immediate gratification.
Or if you do get a laugh on your drama, then you're like,
oh, whoops. That is not how I meant that.
So how'd you get to Los Angeles from there?
So the screenwriting and the playwriting, and I eventually, like, then I started writing spec scripts still in school. Like I wrote like a Friends or something, or I think it was Friends and a Seinfeld. And I really wanted to do sitcoms. Mm-hmm. And my advisor was like, I was set to like move to Manhattan with a friend after college. We were going to go away to college, graduate, and then we were going to move into the city together, you know. And he was like, you know, if you really want to do it, you got to go to LA. At the time, I mean, there wasn't really much in New York other than like, you could do Saturday Night Live or Daily Show or, you know, things like that, but there wasn't sitcoms. So, and
you weren't looking to get hooked on cocaine or speed, so you didn't want to go to Saturday Night Live. So I did it. I mean, now it seems crazy to me, right?
You were not alone. And then most of the stories were all just like, well, we all just decided to come.
And we did it.
And we did it.
Yeah, because the vast majority of the people we've talked to aren't native. They're not from here.
Right.
You know? So when you did decide, okay, I'm going to go, what did that look like? Was it you by yourself? Was it with a friend? How did you do it?
So it just seems so crazy to me. So I had to call my best friend and like tell her I'm not moving to the city, which was terrible. That was part one. And then it ended up being that another kid at my college was planning on moving to Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And so we only knew each other. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm going to get a moving van he was from Ohio. He's like, I'm going to get a moving van if you have anything at school that you want to put in. And then maybe we get a place together for the first few months. I'm going down there first. So I got lucky because I was like, I decided to do this. Lucky. How was I going to, I went there without knowing anybody, without a car, you know. So he took some of my stuff, you know, stuff from my dorm that I was going to bring. And I feel like he was out here maybe for 2 months before. I worked my final summer camp as a counselor at the camp that I worked at every summer.
See, you kind of buried the lead on that. So you were a camp counselor.
Yes, I was a camp counselor.
What type of camp?
It was a day camp.
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of everything. But I did like... I put on shows sometimes at the camp. I was in charge of that with the kids. And
the entertainment director.
Yes, we did fine entertainment. I taught dance a couple summers. Not a very good dancer. But, entertainment. But so I wanted to work that final summer. Plus I needed the money because I moved here with like nothing.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you're coming from nothing. You're like, I don't even know what money I'm going to need.
Exactly.
I just like come with as much as I can.
Yeah. So I did that last summer, and then I moved to Hollywood by Rock and Roll Ralph's. Lived there for a few months with the guy that I mentioned from school, and then turned out an old friend that I had grown up with in Syosset was living out here. I didn't even know because she was a little bit older than me. We had gone years without talking, you know. My mom ran into her mother at the grocery store on Long Island, and she was like, Suzanne's there. And so we hooked up, and then we ended up living together. So
serendipity.
Lived with her. Yeah, it was great. It was great because I don't know. I mean, really, when I logically think about what the heck, I can't even believe my parents were like, sure.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, what was your parents' reaction to? I'm going to LA now.
I don't think they could say anything.
I
also, it's funny because when I was younger, like when I was a kid, because of the movies in the basement, I liked Hollywood. So I was like, I'm moving to California when I grow up. So maybe in a way I warmed them up a little bit, even though that didn't really happen until, later. But so, yeah, I did it and I can't believe I did it when I think about it now. I guess when you're younger, you just kind of aren't as worried.
Right. Yeah, because you don't know what the ultimate consequences can be. You haven't lived enough to go, if I do this and it doesn't work, here are the 14 terrible things that can happen to me. It's just nothing bad's happened so far. I'm doing a good job.
Pretty much, yeah. It was like...
And I did hear, so here's another story. I had some people, once I started, meeting people, heard about a lot of people, they move out for a couple months and then they leave. Mm-hmm. And probably 4 months goes by and I still don't have a job. And I'm like, what am I doing? And I called my dad and I was like, I think I'm just going to come home. And he actually said, it's only been a few months. Like, don't you think you should? Wow. Which is crazy because I was the oldest. Right. And they, I was very I wasn't the kind of kid who was doing out and taking risks.
Right.
I was in the basement. I mean, what was I doing? So... And he was like, and I know my mom was probably like, but it was that conversation was why I stayed. I wouldn't have stayed. I don't think. I think I was too freaked out in that moment. I was like, forget it.
Well, it's overwhelming to come out here. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden you're in this big welcoming community. Everybody's out here doing the hustle, trying to get their thing. And sure, you might be lucky and find some people early on, but still, you have to go out and find it. Especially if you didn't come with anything, same as you. I had nobody out here. I mean, and so it's daunting once it's like, you're a couple months in and you're like, this is not quite what I expected, and
even finding that first job, I couldn't find a job. I didn't think it would be so hard. I was trying to get jobs at restaurants, but I didn't have any experience. Mm-hmm. I was trying to looking in the back of the Hollywood Reporter and Variety for all these crazy jobs. I had an internship for this agent but it wasn't paid work. That's what
it's an internship.
I mean, so it was rough. It was like, what am I going to do? Got to pay rent.
I can't imagine how, I bet it was hard for your dad to tell you to stay, because all I can think of is you want your kid to stretch their legs and to extend themselves a little bit. But for me, I'd be like, we're on our way to come get you.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
But for him
to get my little girl, and it was just good.
For him to be like, nope, I'm going to suck it up here and I'm going to tell her to stay out there a little bit longer. I bet that was turmoil for him. I bet it was really,
and
really
he
hard
wasn't,
for him.
it was cute because he was like, you sure? It's only been he wasn't like, no, you should definitely stay, but he was definitely putting the doubt, so he gave me the space to
figure it out.
No, I want to stay.
And then he hung up and he started crying.
Yeah, my mother probably beat the shit out of him.
I was going to say, your mom was probably like, what did you do?
Bring our little girl home.
So what was your first writing experience out here then? I mean, as far as paid work, say.
Okay, so paid work, because I had another internship. I worked it, so I got hired at the theaters downtown, the Amundsen and the Taper. I was fundraising and very bad at it. Very, very bad.
Well, you have to call people.
You're
love
like,
sales.
Hey, how's it going? It's Suzanne from Center Theater Group. The Amundsen and the Taper. Yeah, how's it going? It's that time of year again. I was so bad. But I did that, and it was a job. And actually, that's where I met Wes. Mm-hmm. So I met my husband there. That they had a theater department. So I was like, I'm gonna go. I'll work in the theater if I can't get a job. And television was like, I was trying to do it. Nothing was happening. I got that job. I interned at the theater department there, which was cool. Mm-hmm. Just reading a lot of scripts. And so that was fun. But
because they do a lot of first runs at the center.
Yeah. And they have different programs and stuff. And so that was really cool. But in the background, I'm trying to get my first TV gig, which I assume is a PA based on my research. I'm like, I have to get a PA job. Nobody wants to hire me as a PA. And I find this, there's an ABC program for like some kind of writing program or something. And I call the number and I get the guy. And he was super nice. And he was like, so what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to, I want to get a job on a TV show. I want to write sitcoms. Well, have you tried to get a writer's assistant job? What's that? So he told me, he was like, PA, it's tough because they like to hire guys because you got to deliver late. You got to carry big things. He's telling. Yeah. So he's like, but writer's assistant, that's really what you want. And maybe you get lucky. Try it. So I go through those lists. They had these lists in the Writers Guild mailers or whatever, where you could call the production office of every show. And I get, some fax numbers and I fax my resume. Sure. But the one place was this show called Unhappily Ever After with Bobcat, the puppet, the Mr. Puppet. Floppy. Yep. Mm-hmm. They hired me as a writer's assistant. And it was totally weird. Yeah. Like people were like, how'd you get this job? And I just, I faxed my resume. It just, the timing worked out where there was a couple of writers who wanted to hire their own assistant. Mm-hmm. So it was like one of these things where they were going to have an additional person and they got to choose who they wanted for whatever reason. Oh no, they called me in because my resume was like, I don't know, maybe it was the only one they got because what was on there? Camp? I don't know.
I mean, you were writing at camp.
But they hired me, so I worked as a writer assistant on that show, and it was very different than any other writer's assistant job I had because it was very old school. The guys who ran that show did it like they wrote in the room. They didn't have anyone in the room with them.
So it wasn't a writer's room. It
was, but the writers were in there, not the assistant. Okay. So the writer's assistant sat outside in the other office and waited for handwritten stuff. So it was old school. But it was great. I mean, I was psyched.
But less educational than if you'd been able to be in the room. But
it was, but at the same time, I got to be on set. I got to see the writers pitching, on set, on show nights anyway. And it was great. And I did that. I ended up going back. I did 2 seasons there. And they let me pitch and I got to write an episode.
Fantastic.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Second season, yeah.
Second season, that's no small feat.
Right. Yeah. So that was really fun. I did it with one of the other PAs. Like they said, if you guys want to pitch together, if you get an idea that we like, maybe we'll let you write it. And they did. So that was amazing.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely took advantage of the situation. You learned what you could from what was going on and turned it to your advantage, which that's a very impressive skill to have. Is to take the positives from a situation that may not be what you're looking for and then turn it to your advantage and do something with it.
Yeah, and this is one thing I always tell people when they ask me, even though I don't work in TV anymore, I haven't in a long time, it's always like, I worked my ass off. Like, I worked so hard. If you work hard, then maybe, you'll get those opportunities. Like, I think those guys knew that I was always there. I wasn't like
you were dependable.
Phoning it in. Mm-hmm. But I was very lucky. For a first job, that was really lucky.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like you landed great.
Because then I worked on plenty of other shows where that didn't happen.
Okay. Sure. So then you start making your network, your writer's network, right? And so was it easier to find?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like at that time, and I don't know how it is now, but at that time, getting on one show and doing a job well enough that they want to, those producers want to hire you again, you kind of... You're in the zone. Mm-hmm. So there's so many people who would say, oh, these people need, like, I didn't even have to look for a job.
Right. You're in the circle of trust and yeah.
For an assistant job anyway.
Sure. But I mean, but like you said, some people can't even get into that.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of waiters out there that wanted to do stuff like that and it just didn't work out for them. So, wow, that's...
Yeah, and I did do a little bit of that. Before I got hired, I did end up getting a job at a restaurant. I got fired, actually, the first day. It really did.
Oh, do tell.
I was so happy. They hired me and they're like, oh, we're having an orientation today. You can come back. Perfect. What time? 1:00. Okay, great. Whatever it is, right? So I leave and I'm like, I'm just going to hang out in the area. I don't want to get caught up in traffic, I go back and there's no parking. And the chef to the restaurant recognizes me. I was just in there. He's in the back helping me find a spot. I show up like, I'm not kidding, 3 minutes late. And they fired me because they said they feel that it sets a bad precedent. So I was fired. Before my even my first shift.
And that is also an anecdotal evidence of people think, oh, come out to LA, just be a waiter, do a thing. It's not that easy. It really isn't that easy to be just because there's the flexibility that those jobs can offer is also like everybody wants that.
Yeah. But it also speaks to that there's a competitive job market.
That they feel for you. They're like, oh, you didn't. 3 minutes, you're gone. We find somebody else.
I thought they were kidding. I started laughing, and no, they were serious.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. The chef was helping me find like I felt like, but the chef, like I was in with the chef, so I was here, you know.
Yeah.
Back home, they'll have somebody like not show up for 3 days because they're just not feeling it, and they're like, well, just get in when you can, because they can't find enough people to staff their places, you know.
Yeah, no.
So, what caused you to fall out of love with that, or fall in love with more narrative storytelling?
So from writer's assistant, I started writing with a partner, and we sold a screenplay, and then we were pitching shows. Like, we were working for a few years together. We were able to, and he was an assistant before also. We left the assistant stuff behind, and we were doing it. And then I had babies, and he ended up kind of going a different direction. He wanted to be in like a different business.
Oh.
So between the kids, and once the kids were born, like we were still doing a little bit, but I had started writing books. I guess also I think about the camp counselor thing a lot because I always had this like kind of kid-like thing that I was drawn to. And I started doing a little bit of that in the background. Because, the thing is with writing for film and television, at least in my experience, it was like you get gigs and then you don't get gigs. And then you get gigs and you don't get and there's a lot of work that you do that you don't get necessarily paid for. We're developing shows, we're pitching, we're working on stuff,
writing
but
specs.
Not unless you sell it will you make any money. So I started doing this book stuff. I got the opportunity, and it was something I always was always interested in, writing for kids.
And what was that opportunity?
My friend knew that I wanted to write for kids, and she had written a book for Scholastic, nonfiction. And she said, the editor, they had somebody who was working on a book and they fell through and they need a super fast turnaround. And are you interested? And I was like, yes. So it was a book of games. It was like perfect for the camp counselor person. It was like you were writing like in this like fun, light cheerleadery voice, just like getting kids to play different games, do different things, creative. It was called How to Survive When You Think There's Nothing to Do. That was the series. And this was on, like games and magic tricks and all that stuff. And so I did it. It was super fast. It was a lot of work, but I did well enough that they asked me back. And so I started writing a lot of nonfiction stuff for Scholastic for kids, like between the ages of like 5 and 10. Did some books on like dinosaurs and snakes and all this crazy stuff. And it was actually fun. It was another like layer of fun in writing where I got to do research and like learn about stuff, and then had to like translate it for kids and make it fun.
But I can also see a parallel to like the advertising copywriting, because each one of those little things about each dinosaur is its own little story that you.
Yep, and it has to be short, simple. I like that, like boiling it down. There's something fun about that.
It's boiling it down, but still keeping it interesting. And
Well, it allows you to get in and out without you getting bored.
Right. Right. So I was doing that for Scholastic, and then one of the girls that I worked with there ended up going to Disney, and I started doing fiction with Disney. I didn't do any fiction for Scholastic. It was all nonfiction. And
did that excite you? Yeah.
And I love so I'll do for different stories based on films. I'll do retellings, which is like kind of like what we're talking about. Like, here's the story. Okay, can you write it for a 5-year-old? Or maybe you can write it for a 12-year-old,
Right.
Adapting those stories. And the other thing which I really like is like pitching stories on, little external stories for these characters based in the world, but like,
Based
what can
in the
they
world,
do?
but what do they do beyond the movie?
Yeah.
So almost kind of like, I guess you couldn't call them sequels, but sort of the idea is they are kind of offshoot stories to learn more about what these characters have done and do. Now, when you do that, does that stuff become any kind of canon or no?
That's one of those tricky areas,
Yeah.
you know. It's like, I mean, they approve everything, so
Right.
they have to be okay with it. But I think if it starts going into that zone too much, where it would impact a sequel, they're going to be like,
too much original story.
too
and,
scary. We don't want to go there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, it's like episodes. You know, it's similar to like pitching on a show. It's like little episodes of this.
But I mean, have you ever
world.
noticed any callbacks to your original works that show up in further iterations of characters?
I haven't noticed.
Yeah.
So it's probably like, would this be fair? So, you know, you have Trolls, for example, like because all the kids were watching it earlier, and you know, there's a Trolls TV series.
Mm-hmm.
All these different stories happen in the Trolls TV series, but then when Trolls World Tour comes out, nothing translates to that. So kind of the same idea. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Now, how is it to adapt all these characters? I mean, do you find anything specifically challenging when you make these original stories?
The original stories.
Yeah.
I think it's both fun having limitations, and then sometimes it's frustrating because it's not my world. You know, it's like it's someone else's space. So it's fun because a lot of that is already answered for you, and it's like they exist.
Right.
There's no like, oh, would they do this? Would they do that? For me, you know, but for them it is. So they might say, this character wouldn't say this.
Right.
And I'll be like, I think he would. But I have to, you know, I have to be okay with that.
And how often is that? Is the back and forth pretty consistent, constant? I mean, are you giving them drafts all through the process, or is it like, we have a first draft, we have a limit of 4 drafts, or what?
For the books?
For the books.
Yeah, it's very clean. It's not like, because I experienced a lot of revisions in the screen stuff.
Right.
But in the books, it's like, we do an outline, they approve that, I'll do a first draft. Usually I only get 1 set of notes.
That's
fantastic. And then occasionally, if there's another set, it's very minimal.
Right.
So it's
not an overhaul.
No.
Yeah. Right.
No.
And you had mentioned something earlier, which I had never even considered, you know, that you write an adaptation for a specific group, 5-year-olds, and then maybe something for a preteen or tween, and then maybe even a young adult version of a movie adaptation. How often for you do they say, do all 3 for us? Or they usually just give you one assignment and you just do that one?
I have done multiple formats for a film before, but I think age-wise, like, I haven't really done anything beyond 12.
Okay.
That's kind of where, like, I stopped aging.
Sure.
I'm just like, I don't want to be 13 again. So,
hell on earth. So horrible.
So, it seems like everything's 12 and under. But I have done before, like, you know, the 5-year-old and the 10 to 12, the 5 to 8 and the 10 to 12.
Now, is that basically as part of the same assignment? Do you write 2 of them so you're like kind of back to back, or do you write one, you come back to it, get another assignment later to do the?
I've gotten them at the same time before, but they're not like, you know, their due dates are scattered. But
how tough is it to train your brain to be like, okay, now I'm not writing for a 5-year-old anymore?
It's easy for me because it's the format. Like, it's like, if the 5-year-old is a picture book, so there's going to be pictures. So I get to, like, sometimes I'll get to create the art notes, I don't actually do the art, but like.
For what you're looking for.
Right. I get to write the little art note, like, what do I want on this page? Right. With the junior novels types of things, those are like, sometimes they'll have little bits of art, but it's not every page like it is for the younger ones. So it is different enough that it's like you're thinking in pictures. What's the picture going to say? What's the text going to say?
So the younger kid ones are probably a lot more like the dinosaur books.
Yeah,
like it's
the
just
younger
a picture,
kids ones,
a couple lines.
Yes, and that can be really hard.
Yeah.
You know,
having a narrative in that small form.
There's that sparse text thing, like you know, it's like it is like a puzzle sometimes. Like, you can't go off in description. Like, you just have to. It has to fit on that page with art. So
do you work very closely with the artist then in that? situation or not?
No,
you just leave your
mean,
notes and they fill it in however they want?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a lot on something like that, the pictures are telling a lot of the story because you don't have that much, text to work with.
Right.
Huh.
But the editors will come back, like maybe, they'll have an opinion about the art and the text, obviously, but like the art, they'll say like maybe this should be this way. So sure. we'll work on the art notes before, but then usually, the artist will just take it and
just kind of fill in the blanks, and as long as it fits the tone and
right,
that makes
sense.
See,
the junior novelizations are what always impress me because you are within a certain structure, but you have to create all the visual on from your own language. Mm-hmm. And is that challenging, or is it pretty? I mean, once you've seen it and you're able to translate that pretty quickly into your own verbiage.
The challenge is that like it's nice to see the finished film, but you don't
always get to.
Yeah. So like you would like to fill in like say there's a scene in some room in a castle that you don't know what it looks like. Like you want to describe it, but you can't because you can't put something in there that's not going to be true. And if you don't see it, then so you have to be, you can't really go crazy with that.
Right.
So that another thing God, this is amazing. Like I'm loving this because a lot of things that I didn't think of. So sometimes you're getting it in writing the adaptation before the movie is even.
You have to. Yeah. The books come out before the films.
Oh, that
typically
would be really hard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow, because the whole marketing aspect of it is they want the books to be as close to the film as possible because they're banking on kids liking the movie and then begging mom and dad for the book, and you haven't seen the movie. So if you're like, and the unicorn was the purplest purple you've ever seen, and the unicorn's like chartreuse.
Yeah, and it happens. You know what? Supposedly it happens. I've heard stories where like they make enough changes and it's just like, oh well, this is like a secret. They can see what the film was before. They can have an idea of something that was changed.
And I think I just remember going back to Scholastic. I always remember growing up getting the Scholastic versions of movie books, and did you had those too, right?
Yeah, I loved those book fairs. That was that was the best day.
Yeah,
ever.
It was like Disney would have like
circling in the magazine the books you're getting. It's so awesome.
Yep. Yeah. It had soon to be a motion picture.
Then how do you know how it ends? Oh God, I bet there's all kinds of NDAs and stuff you have to sign.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because you're getting endings and middles and.
Tell me what Disney movie is coming out in 2 years and what the plot is. Please.
I'd like to know the end. I want to do a Back to the Future moment and bet people money. Yeah, that would be tough too. Gosh, there are so many layers to what you do that I certainly didn't even consider, and I'm hoping that people that are listening are like, wow, I didn't realize it was that involved, because it's like so many things I didn't even think about, and it would have never occurred to me that like the book could come out before the movie, even though I guarantee I've seen them on the shelves and just didn't pay attention.
Yeah.
I mean, because the advertising hype is already out there, so you assume, oh well, it probably is out, right?
Well, and to a point, the book is then advertisement for the movie. So don't screw it up. You might take a movie.
So since a lot of your work is in generated IP, do you find yourself like hungering and using off time to just create something for yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying. That's a challenge. That's a real challenge. I like to work.
Sure.
And I feel like with the creative stuff, I need a little space to do it. Like it's hard. I am like, and I feel like every writer I know is like this. Like I really like deadlines. Like I need the deadline.
It keeps you honest. Keeps you motivated.
It's like it helps give me that momentum. So with my own stuff, even though I try to trick myself with deadlines, it's not the same.
But in the back
it doesn't work.
It
doesn't work.
By that. Yeah.
So you got to get your husband and be like, hey, on every Tuesday, if I haven't done this many pages, you shoot me with a rubber band gun.
Yeah, it won't work. So I feel like that's something too, like having, like you were talking about before with those existing worlds, like all the answers are there for me.
Sure.
So in a way, I'm like trained to like, they're there. Like, what do you need to decide?
Right.
So I need to get better at making these decisions with my own stuff.
And how does that work? Because obviously you're writing for multiple IPs. What is your creative process to change? Because your voice has to match the voice of whatever IP you're in. What's your creative process to change your your inner, because I always tell people, I used to teach a writing class, and I always used to tell them, like, look, your writer's voice is just as unique as your speaking voice, you know? So how do you change your voice? How do you do that?
To do like my own stuff?
Well, yeah, that or between the IPs. So, I mean, it would all be the same. Yeah, it would be a part of the same question. Yeah, how do you change it between the different IPs? And how do you then go, okay, I'm going to shut off.
I'm going to shut Disney off and create... or if you're in Disney, how do I go from the world and voice of Frozen to the world voice of, you know, some other...
I don't even know how to explain that, because it seems I don't want to sound weird, but it seems natural to me. Like
I would, like, you've been doing it.
You get that world embedded in your brain, and it's like, that's just what it is.
Right.
And that's a skill that you have that maybe other people wouldn't have. Yeah.
It's probably like asking Michael Winslow, how do you go from an explosion sound to the siren sound? He's like, I don't know. I just do it with my mouth. You know?
Yeah, I think it's the characters. You know, it's like the characters that drive, and that's that dialogue thing. I think I just feel like I get...
Well, and you were saying that, you know, you've had good feedback on your dialogue. And that's always been, like, when I sit down to write a screenplay, that's the worst part for me. I you know, plot and maybe hooks and stuff like that, but I'm like, I don't know if I can write
because you talk
dialogue
too much, Tony.
I know.
That's what I did. My family was very loud. I did a lot of listening. I think that's what did it.
You're probably not far off, because I'm so in my head and thinking of other things. I'm like, I don't know how other people talk.
So let's go backward just a little bit in the process of writing the adaptations so do you get like a one sheet or something from the production company that says that this character is, you know, angry and doesn't get along with their sister, and then this is the way the story goes? Or do they give you a script from the movie?
Yeah, it's
or
usually the script.
It's just the script.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Oh, you're seeing a lot of cool stuff before everybody else then.
Yeah, sometimes I get to, you know, see a early screening too, which is cool. Like that's been interesting.
I do want to dive into the theatrical that you were involved in. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that was a fun opportunity that came up right before COVID. It was like they were a Disney live show. But that show ended up falling apart. But that was the first opportunity for me to do something that was like live, you know.
Is it like
they record the voices, but it's...
Was it one of those adaptation shows, like where it's the live version?
It's like Disney on Ice.
Yeah, okay.
So then that led to this Disney on Ice stuff that I've been able to do, and it's been fun because it's so different. And one of the things that I miss from television and film and working with a partner is that like collaboration. Like I'll get to talk to editors occasionally we'll meet, and I love it, but it's rare. Most of the time I'm just by myself.
Right.
So getting to do this live stuff has been really fun because I got to collaborate with the director, and like we actually even met in person and did some stuff together. So that was really cool. And it's just different. It's like something totally different for me.
So you're actually writing the dialogue for the shows, these live shows that are going up, and then in kind of the structure of them basically. And then
some of it. I mean, some of it is like piecing together, because have you ever gone to one of the shows? It's like they'll use stuff, you know, from film. Like it's retelling. So some of the stuff is just like scenes from film. And then there's like in between
interstitial
stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, it's been fun. It's been something different and fun.
But sometimes it's just nice to do a completely different medium to like reboot yourself and refresh. So yeah, I could see where it would be a lot of fun.
And learning about all the stuff that they do. I mean, the theatrical aspect of it is intense.
Yeah.
You know, the pyro and the lights and I mean, it's big.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, you know, Disney's probably not making a cheap show. Yeah.
Well, and I think, you know, that's a bunch of people that are essentially living the same life as you, in the sense that they're trying to do service to the original stories as well, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so they get where you're coming from. You know, these actors are playing a character that already exists from another actor.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like you kind of have found your people there because you're all doing the same, trying to do the same thing and do it successfully. That would be fun.
So we're not going to touch on a whole lot of this, but you know, the writer's strike exists, and you're no longer writing for television, but they do bring up good questions for all writers about how to approach AI. I mean, I would think even more so in your genre, because they can, I mean, plug in stories, existing stories. What do you see as the challenges going forward as far as that goes?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because I finally tried to put in some stuff for the Chat GPT because I hadn't even looked at it.
Right. It's interesting to try. Yeah.
It's very interesting. I mean, it's you wonder like how much more is it gonna? How much further will it go? Mm-hmm. It's gonna improve. So you think of like creatively, there's obviously limitations, but
creating new.
Ollie has a strong opinion about everything you're saying.
Ollie, can you come get Ollie?
Man, he really doesn't like AI. There's a problem. Like, they say dogs can sense evil.
Yep, he's warning us. He's giving us the warning. He's like, they're gonna be robot dogs,
and what would he do if he got out there? What would he do? He wouldn't do nothing. It'd be like loosing a squirrel on this.
What? What is it?
I was joking that it's second family because she's always off with them doing something. I was like, well, she's gone to live with her second family now.
You're not directly involved with screenwriting anymore, but we've been talking a little bit about what AI may mean for your vocation. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's scary. Mm-hmm. It seems like it's pretty amazing what it can do.
You said you've played around with it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I wanted to see. I had heard some writer friends said, oh, they put in like ideas for a story or whatever, like see what comes up. And it was interesting. I mean, I do believe that, at least right now, I feel like, the human aspect is really important for things, for writing and communicating and
right.
But I don't know how good will it get.
In terms of especially generating original stories, I really don't know. But I mean, it seems the stuff that I've played with on ChatGPT was derivative.
Right.
Yeah. And so as far as being able to come up with something clever and new, so far anyway, we're not there. But my friend Tony was talking about his fear in the writer's room is they will shortcut and be able to get a story outline, say, and then have a smaller writer's room to fine tune the story outline. Mm-hmm. And then in that way, it wouldn't totally be replacing, but it would be replacing like half the writer's room.
Right.
Well, and so many things, I'm a photographer also, because why wouldn't I just do a bunch of things a little bit? And you see a lot of the AI. You can say, I've got a good friend who is probably one of the top 10 Photoshop artists in the United States. He's amazing. And you can literally type in, give me a knight with broadsword in the style of David Byrd, and it will generate it, and you're going to go, that looks like David took that picture. That's terrifying. Because if they could say, give me a crime movie in the style of Quentin Tarantino, and I mean, it'd mostly be fucks, but that comes out and it has the same general feel. If they can get it for 16th of the price, we're in trouble.
Because I tried doing that to feed in. I'm working on something that I was trying to do, and so I started feeding in like, give me an episode that does this. But what I did find was I do that several times, and I got many times the same beats. Mm-hmm. A lot of the beats that would come back and verbiage that would be the same. But the negative of that is like if they do it in the style of, say, David Byrd gets nothing.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's
the big problem.
Well, there's multiple big problems.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm saying that's the big problem is they've used David Byrd. Somehow they went out either and got some of his imagery and trained it with that imagery, or it has its own ability to go out and find that.
Right.
But, I don't need David Byrd. All his stuff is on the internet, so now I can just have my computer pull it out, and GPT will just, create something.
Yeah. I mean, and playing devil's advocate, because sometimes it's fun. You could also say there's people that will train themselves in the same style and then charge less. actual people. So David Byrne never gets any of that money either, but at least some person is.
Exactly. I guess that's the thing. I mean, and you can blame the person for being derivative and, stand-up stealing jokes. You mean like, oh, that guy stole that joke.
Look, every joke's already been written.
Right. Well, I know. But I'm just saying that's a notorious thing. Stand-up's like, that's my joke. But at least, you have a point. And he got paid. Somebody got paid.
Somebody got paid for it. Yeah,
you can complain that, you should pay me for what you got paid. But
no,
it's going to be an interesting time for any type of creative writing. I mean, even like you were saying, some of the stuff you were doing early in your career, these ad copies or shortening for the Scholastic books.
Right.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, it is a little scary to think about, what happens to all these jobs that could be affected. I talked to somebody about it, a friend who was saying that he feels less scared because he thinks that the AI can be used to help all of us have more leisure time. He's like, if it can replace certain things so that we can have more leisure time, we work too much. Sure, I'm like, okay, well, that's one way to think about it. I'm like, but when you think about the creative stuff, it's like, oh, shit.
Well, it's like, will I have leisure time if I'm not employed because they're doing the thing that I was doing? Right. But, I am of the opinion that I don't ever in the near future see them replacing creativity, the raw creativity that a human being can bring.
Right.
You can say, like you said, in the style of it, but it's still going to be derivative. You're not going to have some breakout new idea or new style come out of AI, I don't think.
And I think all jokes aside, the places that it's going to replace first are going to be lower levels than what I want. But like, okay, let's say for me, the thing that it's going to replace first is like basic editing, for example. Like, I edit a podcast. If it wants to come in and replace the editing that I do, that's great because I have no skin in the game, But if it wants to come in and replace what Ernesto does, that's a bad deal, But I think that it'll probably start replacing that basic stuff first, which there's not a lot of creativity
really necessarily. I mean, because they already exist. If you go to iMovie, it's like, would you like to do a smart movie?
Yeah,
it's based on what it thinks, what you have as footage, how it knows what my narrative is. It probably doesn't know what the narrative is. And that's like, so these editor friends that we've been talking to about it is like, well, editing is storytelling. And so there's a flow to that that I don't think a machine is going to be able to mimic very easily.
Right. Or very, very well. Like, think about, you could go to the theater. Are you going to start watching holograms?
Right.
Is that going to replace the experience?
Right.
Well, remember how terrified everyone got from computer-generated movies?
100%.
Like, people freaked out. It was gonna end actors in Hollywood, and that no one was gonna get any work. And nobody talks about it really anymore.
I mean, and it does exist, but I think.
But it didn't have the impact.
It didn't have the impact
it was
because
it's expensive.
But now there is a fear, and a legitimate fear for actors, especially voice actors, is if you have enough vocal input, they can just replace all the vocal actors and like, well, we got this and we can just make them say whatever we want. So that's scarier to me than I remember. When they were bringing these CG things, I'm like, oh well, like no, there's some stories that people just aren't going to watch animated. Period. But maybe it's going to be a thing. But actors were still getting paid to voice these things, and so it wasn't as big a deal.
Well, and like we said on a discussion we'd had before, the main thing is legislation. Like, not just like union agreements and stuff. Legislation needs to take place because a city council member number 7 should be able to own their voice. It should be their property. No one should be able to use it for anything else. An elementary school teacher should be able to own their voice. Now, if they want it to be used to make some curriculum and stuff, they should be able to say yes, but no one should be able to
recognition for said
right. Nobody should be able to record them teaching their class for a year and then be like, well, we have your voice and we can tell it to do whatever we want.
And we know what your curriculum is now, but
But
I say the same thing about writing, though. I mean, it's like I think it should be all. I mean, most of your stuff's copyrighted, right? And that copyright should, in my opinion, cover you for any, I mean, you probably made some contractual agreements of how Disney can use these things or whoever, Scholastic, but in general, you don't expect it to be then parsed out to be other projects that you're not getting paid for.
Well, with the stuff that you adapt, it's kind of like it lives out there. You know what I mean? It's like, It's already out there. Like,
well, and even if you wrote, like, say you wrote a complete novel, it's a lot harder to prove. I mean, other than if it's verbatim, it's a lot harder to prove that someone wrote it in your voice than it is if you can take an actual spectrogram of a voice and be like, no, this is their voice. You lifted this voice and then put it together to make other things. So it would, I mean, you almost would need more legislation on something like that, very specific verbiage to say, look, this person owns their style, and how do you prove a style? You know, I make no argument against it. It's just, how do you prove?
Yeah, that's one of those things with music, right? That's been a big thing with
music. Yeah, and well, but they have gone through that with music. Is like, what portion of a song needs to be replicated in order for it to be derivative? I think that's pretty settled law about how many bars of something, you know, or if it's a specific short hook, like that's that hook, and if you use it, you are clearly stealing from this other person. So I think that part of it can be done fairly easily, I think, because they already have plagiarism software for the kids.
Right.
Well, yeah, but that's copied verbatim.
Not necessarily. Some of it's like, this is not your voice.
Right. Well, and that's what the AI as far as students are concerned too, right?
Yeah. And I guess I've never seen that. I'd like to see it work. I'd like to see how like what it says, you know, because if I'm paraphrasing, I mean, that's how you do research. Like,
it's not. Well, then I guess we do have to have my wife on, because she will tell you specifically paraphrasing is not research.
Well, I mean, if you're writing, like if you're assigned to write like a report about something, you're going to be paraphrasing it. Like, that's how you do research for your report. You're not going out as a 15-year-old and doing like, all right, I need to test this for its alkalinity and see what it actually is. You know, it's like, no, tell us about the alkalinity of sedimentary rock. It's like, okay, well, sedimentary rock gets its alkalinity from blah, 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 blah. You know that because you read it somewhere.
Right, and this is for more longer essays than, say, a short answer. You know, give me a report on so-and-so's life and the impact of their work. And, you know, they can look at, input some of their previous writing and go, this is not the same style at all. And then they'll double check it on plagiarism sites and go, this.
Wow, that's incredibly like unreliable though, because I know if you were to look at my my writer's voice from a research paper from like my junior year in high school to my senior year in high school 1 year, I'm going to sound completely different.
Possibly. I mean,
no, undeniably.
No, I'm just saying, as a general say, that's possible. It's not the be all.
But that's what I'm just trying to figure out how they.
No, you failed. You know, it's just a screening process, so that if they do come across and it is dramatically different, they can go, can we see your work?
I gave it to you. You just ran it through the thing.
Can you say that? Tell me in your own words what it says. You know, that type of thing.
I wrote it.
Right.
Yeah. No, but repeat it.
I wrote it down so I wouldn't have to repeat it. This isn't speech class.
Guess what? Life's rough.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
So is there any dream projects? Anything you've been itching to...
Any dream projects?
Yeah. Oh.
I guess just, you know, the one of the things I'm working on, I want to finish. Like that's, you know,
that's all you have to say.
Yeah,
exactly. You're working on it.
Yeah. I'm working on it.
Which is great to be working on what you want to work on.
Right.
Yeah.
What's that like? I wouldn't even know how that felt.
You're doing it right now, buddy.
Oh, shoot, that's right. I am.
You're doing it right now, buddy.
Hooray! So, you know, you talked a little bit about like writing for yourself, writing things that are your own IP. I don't want you to like tip your hand and be like, well, this is what I'm working on, and now people will hold you accountable for it. But
that's a great idea.
But where can people read some stuff that you've written that's yours?
Nothing. You know what? I don't have anything published that's not based on something somebody hired me to write.
So we can look forward to it then. Once we see it, that's going to be a thing that like we'd be like, wow. She did it, and this is it, and we're finally getting to see it.
Because even the produced stuff, that was with a partner, so it's not, I mean, maybe that's one of the things that, you know, is a little bit hard for me, adapting so much, and like, you know, like you were talking about earlier, like your voice, like I have I love talking to people who want to write or who are starting to write and give them, you know, inspiration for finding their own voice, but, you know, I'm doing a lot of adapting. So,
sure. But that is not, I mean, we've talked to some people that have been screenwriters, and a lot of times they'll get handed previous work. I mean, it's not like this magic bullet that you're doing one form or another that all of a sudden you're just Because I got a friend who's now in his 60s and has finally written his own first novel that is all his own work, and that's what he's been working on for a long time. That doesn't diminish the other work at all, but it's saying your own voice sometimes is misleading because there are so many collaborative forces in every form.
And even when I was doing original stuff, I was like, lots of times, like you said, pitched or like, we want you to do it this way. So it's not, when you're writing, I mean, working on this book that I'm working on, it's really, there's nobody telling me what to do. But, this is probably the first time ever.
But, and you will be getting notes from an editor when you
later.
Get one.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Even then you'll be like, well, yes.
Yeah.
Very rarely does anybody go, that's the perfect book.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that book, and I will
Right.
publish it now.
No,
Yeah.
of course.
But I mean, even when you wrote with a partner, that was unique IP, though, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, even that would be I wouldn't discount that at all as being an original.
No, I mean, Sue has a movie.
Yeah, I have a movie.
What is it?
We had some funny. We had fun. Like it was really fun collaborating with someone for comedy because we would just make each other laugh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We were younger. It was like, whatever. What's stupid? You're an idiot. It was just like. So we had a good time doing that.
Yeah, because we were just talking about the Channel 101 guys. I don't know if you know who that is, but that's the people that did Yacht Rock.
Oh, okay.
The Yacht Rock videos, and it's Dan Harmon, it's Justin Rowland. I mean, and what they turned into past that. But I mean, that's all it was. And it was be like you in your basement, or it'd be like, it's just that type of writing where it's just like, there's no barriers, and what's funny? That makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which, gosh, it would be so great if that's just how it always was. You know what I mean? Because that's, when I got into
money brings in the other part. Yeah, it's
but when I got into stand-up comedy, I was like, I just want to make people laugh, man. And then I was just getting out when it started to get really tough to be a stand-up comic because everything was under a microscope. And if you said the wrong thing at the wrong times, like, you were just done. So I'm kind of glad I got out when I did, but like, it would have broke my heart because I'm like, look, man, I'm just trying to make people laugh. Sometimes I might say the wrong thing. Like, that doesn't mean I mean it, you know? And so like, that's what it should be about. Like, if you're being genuine and having fun and somebody's going to laugh and somebody's going to enjoy it.
So you can look up Sue's work on Amazon?
Amazon, yeah, or any bookstores.
Website?
I don't have a website.
I believe you can find the movie on Amazon as well.
Wieners.
Sold.
It's a road trip movie.
Oh, you had me at Wieners.
So it was built for writing that way, like you can tell. Oh, they just were like having a great time writing this movie.
We were talking about that when we were watching Yacht Rock last night. I was like, these guys are having fun. Like, that made it that made up for any place that it was just kind of like, come on, because it was like, but that moment fell flat. But they were having fun doing it.
You can tell they enjoyed it.
So it's a win 100%. In my book.
Yeah.
Wieners. I can't wait.
Wieners.
I can't wait. Wieners. I wrote it down.
I remember, too, when we talked about that title, my writing partner was like, really? Yeah, Wieners.
Do it.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
The inspiration was he tried to get the internship with the Wienermobile.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He wanted it so badly, and he got rejected. And so the whole thing came from that.
We were on vacation and we saw it, and I was like, this like date kind of dates us. Like, I'm like, girls, it's the Wienermobile, and they're like, the what? And I was like, the Wienermobile, and they're like, I don't even understand what that means. I was like, look out your window, it's a giant wiener. And they're like, why? And I'm like,
oh, you mean that hot dog?
Yeah, like, you don't understand what it's like to be alive. Just go back to your
Did they
screens.
look up? Right, they were just looking down.
No, they looked up, but they were just like, why would anybody drive a hot dog, Dad? And I'm like, because it's awesome.
Why would you not want to do that?
Why wouldn't you?
Like, there are two cars I want to drive in life. Kit from Knight Rider and the Wienermobile. I cannot decide which one I want to drive more. And
they're hard to park, though. The Wienermobile is, it's hard to parallel park the Wienermobile, but yeah.
It's got to have a horn that's like...
It has to.
Does it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the General Lee, but yeah.
No, that's...
Okay.
Not... Get your horn straight. Don't be ignorant. Jeez.
That's ignorant.
That's ignorant.
That's ignorant.
That's ignorant. I just got all worked up and sweaty.
Over the Wienermobile. You're just excited.
Oh, yeah, it really doesn't take much. I'm just some Midwestern boy out here in the Los Angeles. Just getting excited over the Wienermobiles.
Well, Sue, thank you for coming out and talking to us about what it is you do. It's been very, very enlightening and entertaining. And I don't think a lot of people understand what it is to do what a lot of people do anyway. So pulling that back and understanding is what this podcast is all about.
No, I definitely learned a ton, and I hope you had a good time. I hope you had fun.
It was fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much, Sue, and thank you for what you do.